Yes, good morning. Bueno, vamos a probar.
Let's see if the loudspeakers are working. Hello? Are the earphones working? Hello, sir? Yes?
Dear Vice President Šefčovič, Minister Nadal, President from Energi should be here. He will be arriving in 5 minutes because he's stuck in an accident. But for the time being, Ángel Saz, thank you, is replacing Mr. Solana. Dear ambassadors, representatives from ministries, social partners, and civil society, dear friends. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you here in our premises for such a high-level conference. High-level conference on a subject that is a priority for not only for the European Commission, but I dare to say also for the Spanish government and for all of us. I am even more delighted that Vice President Šefčovič has chosen Spain to kick off his second tour of Energy Union, tour which will take him over the coming months to all EU member states. So you are very welcome, Vice President. Para la Comisión Europea, como decía,
for the European Commission, energy is a priority, and that is why an energy union is being developed so that it will guarantee citizens and companies affordable and environmental friendly energy. The idea is for energy to flow freely within the European Union, for prices to come down, creating new skills and jobs and increasing exports. And at the same time, the European Union will have a sustainable economy which is environmentally friendly. So as you can see, the plan is very ambitious. That is why we wanted to organize today this high-level meeting to discuss with you the goals and the main challenges that we face, both the European Union and Spain individually. The program we present to you includes 3 sessions that cover many topics. First of all, we will talk about energy security and geopolicy, solutions for the industry and for citizens. Then we will talk about energy efficiency through research, innovation, and public contracts. And finally, we will talk about energy and social challenges, climate change and social challenges from transportation to housing. Each part of the session will be introduced by experts in the field who will present the main challenges and opportunities for both Spain and Europe. And this will be followed by a discussion with the members of the audience. Finally, without any further ado, I'd like to encourage you to use all your energies to participate in the discussion, but also to participate through social media. And without any further ado, we will open the session, and I give the floor to the Vice President of the European Commission, Maroš Šefčovič.
Thank you very much. To thank you much for organizing interactive and very, very interesting, because you very much need in Europe things forward. And thanks to him, we have today the real post of the High Representative of the foreign policy situation. And I also explained to me already a lot of things, specificities of Spanish energy and afternoon. And as you know, that we are working very, very. And I think that the answer to the first question is very clear, that we clearly want to also free flow of energies, that we would finally take a benefit and call community. And then I think we can speak about more 28 national market for leaders, if any aspects you'll be, and if we manage the European energy markets, but also to Spain and to the Spanish consumers. And another reason which I'm also going to discuss with the Minister good use of the European funds. And therefore, we want to have Spain as one of the pilot countries for creation of so-called investment platform for getting more money into the energy efficiency projects, because if you have higher energy efficiency, your people pay less for the electricity bill, less for heat, less for cooling, and at the same time you are increasing your energy security, and of course it helps to protect our environment. So Spain already had a lot of experience with different platforms, with different EU programs, and therefore we are going to discuss this afternoon how can blend these funds, how can we use this new approach which is promoted by the European Commission, by the EIB, to leverage more money, to bring more investment into this sector, and to promote energy efficiency in our buildings. Then, of course, what is quite remarkable about Spain is the fact that Spain is probably the strongest supporter of the common European energy policy. If you looked at barometer figures, 84% of Spanish citizens support more cooperation on the European level in the field of energy and climate policy. It's more than EU average, where it's around 73%, which is still remarkable in today's Europe, that you can have such a high support for one particular sector and the cooperation on the European level among the EU member states. But in Spain, it's very clear that the citizens see this as a reasonable thing to do. They want us to do more, and with the minister and with the Spanish government, we'll do our utmost to make sure that it will bring tangible benefits. Then, of course, Spain is also unique in the way how you developed your industry in the renewables. As I'm sure you already noticed that the European Commission just cleared the mergers between Gamesa and Siemens, which now becomes the global #1 company for manufacturing wind farm, wind turbines, windmills, and that's excellent, because what we need in Europe, we need these global champions, we need companies with a global outreach, and I think that it would be very strong demonstration about the European manufacturing qualities and European innovation in the clean tech, for which there is growing demand across the world. And if you allow me to just conclude with a couple of words on our targets, which we touched briefly upon with the Minister. I think that Spain is doing very well, and I'm quite confident that in a reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions, in the target for renewables, with this new auction, which was just announced for 3,000 megawatts, that Spain will hit the target. I understand that there will be a challenge with energy efficiency, especially because the economy is growing. And I know how much all this is dependent on interconnections with the rest of Europe. And there we had, I think, very solid results of the high-level political meetings. There was clear demonstration, very strong political will from Spain, from France, from the European Commission to move this project forward. But I understand that we also see certain delays in how they are implemented, and we will be brainstorming with the Minister later on what we can do to make sure that Spain would be properly interconnected with the rest of Europe and could harness also the benefits and pluses of European interconnected market, because that's one of the key goals of what we want to achieve under the EU Energy Union. The last aspect I would like to bring to our discussion, and that's a little bit my lesson learned from my last week visit to United States. I think we need to develop and present what you already did here in Spain from the point of view how strong business sense the transition into this clean tech, green tech technology has. That actually this is the job creating sector, that this is the technology for which there is a big demand abroad. And if you look how the renewable sector developed in Spain. So we see that already in 2014 there was 60,000 people employed in the sector in Spain, and that turnover was nearly 8 billion euros. And actually the number of people working in this sector in Spain belongs among top 4 countries in Europe, and this just shows how important growth generating, revenue generating and job creating sector the sector of renewable energy has become. What we are expecting according to our impact assessment will happen in this area by 2030 is that Spain could create up to 100,000 additional new jobs, and that the sector can increase the revenue up to 12 billion euros in the GDP. So these are, I would say, big numbers, and therefore it's worth discussing and making sure how to make these policies a success. And the last thank you would go also to the mayors of Spain, because you are, I think, #1 country in Europe, and I would say in the world, if it comes to the number of the cities which want to be transformed into the smart cities, which want to work together with other cities, other mayors under the global covenant of mayors. All over the world, we have now more than 7,000 mayors working together, but you should be very proud because 1,755 cities in the covenant is from Spain. So it means that each mayor had to think about planning, about sustainable goals, about what they want to achieve on the municipal level, and they clearly demonstrated that wish to make sure that the city is sustainable, it's modern, and it's becoming smarter and smarter. So that's remarkable. For that I'm very thankful, because we need a lot of inspiration for smartening of our cities, and that's clearly one of the examples we'll be bringing from Spain to the rest of the European countries. So dear Aranzu, Javier, Alvaro, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very much looking forward to spend with you the whole morning to discuss the Energy Union in Spain and what can we do better together. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Vice President. Ministro, tienes la palabra.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming.
Speak in English, I think it's more fluid, and so Vice President can in a more direct way, know what we as Spanish government are thinking about all such a complicated issue as is energy policy. There is something I like to say every time I talk about energy, is that it has become more or less a historical regularity that every 100 years we've got an energy revolution. It happened at the beginning of the 19th century with coal and steam, and then 100 years later with the explosion engine and electricity. And now we are in the middle of a new revolution, which is the renewable energy, usable. I must remember that Christopher Columbus went to America with renewables. But it has taken a lot to have the level of efficiency and usability of renewable energy we have right now. And this is a different revolution. It's not the same as it was in the past, because in the past we were using energy to produce more private goods and services to increase the standard of living. Now we are using this revolution to improve the health of the planet. The aim is to produce more or less the same, but complying with very complicated environmental constraints, targets, goals, that are going to be useful for all of us. We are working for an international, a global public good, not for increasing the level of consumption of our households. This is new, much more complicated to be tractable politically, and of course technologically as well. And here is where it comes the idea that I think, perhaps it's just an open idea, that energy policy in the European Union has more or less the same level strategically of importance as the common currency. I think they are the two real bets we've got right now. If we are able to do things right in both sides, monetary policy and energy policy, that will give quite an advantage to the European Union vis-à-vis the rest of the world. If we are the ones that we are doing things right, better than the others, better thought, that will pose the continent in a wonderful position compared with the rest of economic areas in the world. I have an example of this in mind. In the early 70s, when we had the oil crisis, there were this general idea that we should consume less gasoline, less oil to make our societies better. Americans did it one way, was to establish a very, very constrained speed limit in the roads. We did something else. We imposed taxes to gasoline and oil derivatives. 40 years later, there is no comparison in which shape the European car industry is compared with the American. We were right at that time. It was much better to impose taxes and make our engines more efficient. Because at the end of the day, we improved the technology, we were able to produce better cars, and we won the race in automobile industry compared to other parts of the world. In Asia, happened something similar than in Europe, and that's why in Asia also they produce wonderful cars. So these kind of strategic decisions that at that time perhaps are quite urgent, 40 years later, 50 years later, are crucial to pose our economies and our societies in a better or worse shape. And that's why I think this reflection, this need to think about energy policy in the long term is crucial. It was one of the most important things to do in Europe right now, but thinking of what effects this is going to produce for the next generation or even for the two next generations. That's why it's so important to be right and to do it in a very thoughtful way, with a lot of common sense, and in all decisions that involves technology, how technology is going to develop, as it happened 40 years ago in the examples of the cars I gave, the best thing is to be accurate, to be precise. All of us have a partial idea of what's going on and what can be done. That's why we need a lot of dialogue. And I think the initiative of Vice President Šefčovič of Maros to talk with everyone is the right thing to do. And with many people involved here, not only governments, also companies, people that are specialists in technology, environment, all these kind of things, because we need to be very sure that we are doing is the right thing and flexible enough in case we are doing something wrong to change and to correct the strategy. Going to the main issues that for us are important in this energy strategy is first, of course, the goals should be the right ones, but I think there is quite an agreement of what kind of goals we want to achieve in the next decade and in the decades afterwards. The second point is how we do it. Always we have to do it optimizing, minimizing the cost and optimizing the benefits. And I think it's not an ideological debate. It's much more a technological debate, a matter of being able to understand what's going on. Talking about technology, we have to be very close to technology when we are taking political decisions. If we go ahead, there is a waste. Here, an example, in Spain, we have the example of having invested too soon in renewables at a very high prices. That meant that it was done with precipitation. It was done too soon. But doing it too late doesn't allow a continent or a country to take part in that revolution, technological revolution is taking place. So that's why we have to be always very careful and do things accurately and right, as I was saying before. Thinking about whole Europe, as the Vice President said, for the case of Spain and the Iberian Peninsula in general, the most important thing is to be interconnected. We still are quite an energy island in Europe. So, of course, talking about energy internal market for us still is a dream. And to be part of it is the main goal of the Spanish government. Otherwise, all these kind of new rules, new achievements, new governance cannot be applied to a part of the continent that still is an island. It could be very costly and it could be very difficult to manage. So our first goal, of course, could be in any case to be part of that real internal market. In some places in Europe are much more a reality. We look with envy countries that have 60% interconnection with their neighbors. we only have 3%. It's a huge gap we would like to cover. At the same time, the European Council in 2014, in October, recognized the need of more flexibility in the case of lack of interconnections. If we cannot have interconnections right now or very rapidly, at least we would need some kind of autonomy in managing our system according to our needs. And that has been recognized as part of European policy. And this is one of course, the mainstream, the most important thing in Spanish energy policy, thinking about integrating it in the general European strategy. But I want to remark another point, which has been highlighted as well by the Vice President Šefčovič, which is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is the best way of doing energy policy. No way. The best energy, it doesn't pollute, it's not costly, it's the energy we don't need, we don't consume. And here I want to remark something that we have been demanding, as we've got here a Vice President of the Commission. We need to be more flexible in how national accounts count for energy efficiency projects in public buildings. Now the rules are too harsh, very complicated to comply with. It's being considered as if we were building a road or a train, which is not the case, because it's a self-paying project. It reduces its consumption, and we can calculate the, not only the efficiency, but also the economic return of the project, which is not the same case as building a road, a hospital, or a school. While still we consider these kind of projects as if they were normal public works. And I tell you, in this country, we could do much more in public building efficiency, much more, if these rules were more flexible and more adapted to the real economics, in fact, of these kind of projects. I know that the Vice Presidency of Maros is aligned with what I've been saying, but it is true that we need to convince the people of ECFIN. And that's why I'm telling.
And Eurostat.
That's it, ECFIN, Eurostat. Okay, they must understand how important this is, because they are not the typical projects in which it's quite unknown the total benefit and increase of production and GDP. We can measure that, we can count that, so we can be more flexible in this. I'm telling this because we have to work in both plans, I could say. One is the general strategy. As I was saying before, we are thinking in a very long term, and we have to be right, and if we are right, this will give an advantage to our continent, but at the same time we have to have concrete projects, concrete things to do, both in regulation, in finance, and things that people feel, and they bring benefit in an immediate way. And I think we are doing this in European energy policy, but it's important as well to have this thing to show. Vice President Šefčovič is going to see 2 projects tomorrow. He was telling me this is the kind of things we also have to show. Energy policy is not only about big ideas and things that not many people understand. It's also about concrete benefits everyone can feel and understand in a very easy way. So we've got a very long road ahead of us. Quite a discussion we are going to have about the winter package and how to implement it. And of course, many national and sectoral interests are going to be involved. Let's hope that at the end of the day, general, continental, and national interest is well preserved. And we are right about what we are doing and make Europe the place in which this strategic idea of energy, as other countries are doing, by the way, because all economic zones in the world are using energy as a strategic resource, we do it right. In a better way, we take our decisions according to the development of technology, which is the right thing to do. And I really think that we are in a crucial moment in our energy history in Europe, and it's very interesting what we are living and what we do for the next 2 generations, as I said before. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Minister. Javier Solana.
Thank you very
welcome,
much.
First of all, welcome.
Thank you
and so
very
have the
much,
floor.
and my apologies for having arrived late, which has something to do with energy also, because the highway was as blocked as you could not imagine. The entrance in Madrid was absolutely impossible. And, well, I thought, my goodness, what can we do with these things? I mean, I'm going to be talking about energy, and here we are, expecting energy, but stuck. Okay, well, thank you very much, Maros, for your kind words and for having been with us. You know that you can come here whenever you want. You like this country, I know that. So whenever you want, you can come. And what can I say about Alvaro Nadal, the minister? I was asking yesterday about with a good friend which is in the energy business, and he told me he was going to see Alvaro Nadal, and it was very easy, because I was going to tell him just what your brother told me, don't change it, please. So it's a family which is going from one grandbrother to the other into the domain of energy. And Alvaro has the very lucky situation that for the first time in the government of Spain, we have the Ministry of Energy. I think we never had before. Energy was, and you are the really responsible phrase that Alvaro has said. Alvaro has said that in a way, energy is very important to guarantee that we can supply global public goods. I'd like very much to have introduced in this debate from the very beginning, Alvaro, the global public goods. And really, when you talk about energy, you have to put the provision of these global public goods at the forefront. And that is climate change and all these things related to climate change. And the two things are related. How energy, which is to provide local public goods, to drive a car, to heat your house or whatever, which is very private, very local, even is almost the most local thing. You can heat your house, with energy. But at the same time, you have to do it in such a manner that you have to be able to produce at the same time, to guarantee at the same time that the global public goods are produced. And these are the real big limitations that we have when we talk about energy. And that is why, from one point, it's very locally and individually and nationally you want, but at the same time it has to be global. We need global rules to handle these problems. At the same time, we need some parts of national rules to really do the good job in that. In the European Union, although, as you said also, that for the beginning, coal was in the first agreement that was done in the European Union was coal. And then we forgot coal for a long, long time, and we have to come back down to say, what can we do with coal? Because at the end of the day, still, coal is a big problem. Without, if we were able to decarbonize the mix, we will have a tremendous amount of leeway to comply with the production of public goods and comply with the numbers and figures of the Paris agreements, etc. Now, when you look at Europe, you see the difference of the history of every country when you look at energy. Every country has a mix which is very different. And how do we go, how we can continue to construct a market which is single, if I can say, with an origin which is so dispersed and so different. And that is the big challenge that we have, how we do these things in a manner that the companies don't suffer, that the people are get security and energy, etc., etc. But at the same time, as I said, that can be done with an envelope which is global. And I think that Spain has a particular, I'm going to become very nationalistic now. I think that what Alvaro has said is very dramatic, Maros, you know it very well. The fact that we are not interconnected is absolutely absurd. I mean, now, we have a connection with France, open, potentially open, And remember for a moment, you probably most of you know what has happened this winter. This winter, Spain has received for the first time, gas from the United States because we could not reconnect with France. The first ship that has arrived to Spain from shale gas from the United States has come here. And this winter has been in it. And at the same time, when you think that we could have done it, putting the connection working, this would have been absolutely unnecessary. So they have the fracking gas from the United States into the circuit of Spain because we are interconnected. So, Maros, this is a very important thing, really. I think the minister has said it very well. We are not in the market. We are not in the European market because they don't allow us to be in the European market. So please take this into consideration very seriously, because we have a number of LNG plants. We could be doing reverse from gas from other places to have reverse gas into the European Union market. So all these things are very important that I am sure that you know very well and you understand it very well, but it has to be brought to the debate in the European Union as a European problem. It's not a national problem, it's a European problem. Now, if we're able to get that into the Commission, it will be a very, very important achievement. I think that we want also a market, an integrated energy market. It's very, very important. And don't forget that the geopolitics still is a very problem that has to be taken into consideration. Imagine Turkey. The Turkey that we were thinking about, some of the connections from Azerbaijan, etc., was a Turkey in which it will be a transit country and friendly with the European Union. Today, it's a question mark how much Turkey is going to contribute, or is ready to contribute, to allow to be the transit country vis-a-vis toward the European Union with the connection with Russia, etc., etc. So still the geopolitics is very important. We cannot forget. So I'm glad that we have the opportunity today to discuss all these issues, and I hope very much that at the end of the day, Maros and Alvaro, you will get, and the companies which are here, they will have a better understanding of what is going on, and you could do your calculations, you are looking to the future with a better knowledge of what it may happen within the European Union. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry to have arrived late.
So thank you very much, Javier. I think we have already a lot of things in our plate to debate and discuss afterwards. So we are going to stop here this inauguration and we'll start with the second session. Thank you very much.
Oye, Álvaro, si quieres, yo estoy dispuesto a hacer esto. Está bien, ¿no?
Photo take, one to take a photo. Okay. Los tres. Real fast. You want to take the business? Yes. Oh, yeah.
We are going to move the chair because it's chair. Yeah.
Ponga subtitamente, sí.
Oh, it's great that they could join us.
Great pleasure, great pleasure.
I mean, it's they are doing quite a lot of work. We have a very, very complicated
Thank you.
Okay, we see each other in Thank you. Real Decreto Ley de Estiba. Está.
Hola. Sí, vamos a seguir, por favor. Si se pueden sentar, seguimos con la...
We follow now with the first panel. I introduce Ruben Esteller from The Economist in Madrid, who is going to be the moderator of this session. We are still in web streaming, and we don't want the people who follow us in the computers, they shouldn't have to wait too long. Ruben, please, you have the floor. Well, we now go on. We have an enormous delay. We are going to try to reduce the delay. We're going to have 30 minutes each. We will try to leave them at 20 so that this will be balanced. This is something that we always try to have balance and level things in our country. Well, as you know, the first part of the panel, Energy Security and Geopolitics, we have Mariano Marzo, Professor of the University of Barcelona, Eloy Alvarez Pellegrini, Director of the Chair of Energi, Orchestra in the Basque Country, and I'm going to give them the floor immediately. I'm just the moderator. Fine, thank you very much. If I could have the first overhead, please. Well, what I have to do now with respect to the program is to emphasize somehow the issue of geopolitics, the importance of geopolitics in the energy European policy. And in order to do that, well, I think we are too far, we've gone too far. We have to remind a few data that I believe are important, because we tend very often to look towards the future and forget about the short term and the midterm. And the reality is that the European Union altogether, the mix it has is in 72% fossil fuels, something similar to 21, and coal and solid fuels, including as well some biomass, is 17%. So we've got a reality here that is undeniable, that we are going to transform, that's for sure, that's the way to go, but that we have to manage. And manage this, as you see, will go through worrying about the security tendency of the European Union altogether. All these are data of Eurostat from 2016. The whole of the European Union is what you have to the left bar, is 53.5%. Obviously, as the previous mix, this varies very much according to the different countries. What they have in the case of Spain is 73%. But this is bearing in mind that the European statistics or the nuclear fuel are not considered as a fuel that is external. So our mix depends very much on fossil fuels, a lot of great dependency as well, great energy dependency from outside, and this energy dependency from outside is particularly, as couldn't be different elsewise, given the resources that we've got, especially high in the case of coal, 68% of crude oil and LNGs, 88%, and natural gas, approximately 67.5%. And the problem is that this dependency for these fossil fuels, the total has been growing since 1995 until the present day. The different colors of the bars are different years. As you can see on the slide, we are not improving, we are increasing rather the dependency. Solutions very rapidly. The only production that has grown internally have been the renewable ones. So whilst the rest have been reduced in the European Union, we have to bet clearly for renewables. We have to bet clearly for efficiency, and this is included in the message. But we have to manage as well in the short or mid-term this level of dependency with a series of countries that are are suppliers, and this is the case, for instance, of oil, Russia firstly of all, and Norway second, and then a series of names of countries that are not a paradigm of geopolitical stability, to say the least. The same thing happens for gas. This varies as well according to countries, but this is the average of the European Union, with Russia and Norway, and then a whole series of countries, many of them do not enjoy the geopolitical stability, as I said before. So with respect to the future, the issue now will be focused on geopolitical issues, on the usual focus or approaches of geopolitical instability. We are talking about mainly the issue of Russia and its supply relations with the countries from the former bloc of Eastern and Central Europe, Northern Africa, Middle East, and the Caspian Sea. The Caspian, understood as Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Iran in the part that corresponds, and etc. At that respect, obviously, as Javier Solana has reminded us, not only is it important to have the geopolitics of the producing countries, but it's also interesting of having the geopolitical stability of the transit countries, as is the case, for instance, of Turkey, in the case of the origin from the east, and the case of the Ukraine and countries when the gas comes from Russia. A question that I leave on the panel for the Vice President: have we made any progress in the diversification? Is significant progress in the diversification of the path of transport from Russia? This is being discussed right now, the Nord Stream 2. They discuss about South Stream as well, and it seems that many countries that depend on Russia for the supply, mainly gas, are not very happy at this respect. And I would like to hear the development of this issue as well. Apart from the normal foci of tension, there is also, we have emerging stars that we have to think about as well, to take into account, pay special attention to. And one of them is what happens in the Eastern Mediterranean region, the Eastern Mediterranean, with especially Cyprus, but also Israel, also Egypt, with a series of large, great discoveries of gas that are pending to be marketed, but that are slightly altering the polarity of the gas supply. What are the plans of the European Union with respect to those gas supplies from the Eastern Mediterranean region, the Levantine Basin more specifically? And what are the lessons we can draw from in the European Union with respect to not abandoning the exploration of hydrocarbons, because until very short time ago, this was a province that nobody gave anything for. And suddenly we know that there are enough indices, not only in the Levante, but in other regions of the Mediterranean, in order to develop or find sites of similar characteristics, deposits of similar characteristics. Javier Solana has already mentioned that as well. What is the position of the European Union going to be with respect to the LNG, mainly taking into account what has been called the second shale revolution, because the reduction of costs and the efficiency of the United States industry makes us suppose that we are going to have a great supplier, potential supplier, on the other side of the Atlantic, and we have to bear that in mind as well. And finally, in order to finish, the Vice President Šefčovič told us that he comes from a visit in the United States, and one of the great geopolitical unknowns that we've got right now for the European Union, and especially, is the energy policy of the European Union in the Trump era. What is the impact that this can have on European energy security, and mainly for the industrial competitiveness, the America First policy? This is a question. And the second one, also important is a reflection that I think has not yet been made. What are the geopolitical implications that the energy transition that we are committed to after the agreements of Paris, what importance can it have? Because in all transition there are winners and losers. There will be resistances as well. The European Union has to advance in that direction, given the fact of the resources it has. But we may expect strong resistances from the countries. I'm talking about the United States resources that are extremely important. Have we really assessed or evaluated the implications of this resistance to the energy transition when we want that 2/3 of the fossil fuels stay in the subsoil? Well, these are many topics on the panel, very important, but all of them. We go ahead with Eloy Álvarez Pellegrí, so he gives an indication about the price situation, and then we want the Commission to answer many of these questions and
I would like to
others that may arise.
The Spanish representation and acade for invite Orchestra and myself to this interesting seminar to such a distinguished audience. Following the presentation of Mariano, probably I'm going to follow in Spanish, or as you, I don't know, perhaps it's better to do it in English, I guess. Given the topic that I have been assigned, the matter of prices, I think it's important to say that we are going to talk about prices, but to talk about prices from the point of view is okay? Yeah. Of the industry. Because really in the time that it's assigned is necessary to be selective, and really the matter of prices, I think, are also important for the industry and in the end for the citizens, because the industry development and industrial development is important. So I would like to focus in prices for industry, energy prices for industry, and then of course to deal with the matter of interconnections. Well, usually we identify the competitiveness of energy with low cost of energy, and that I think is also true, because really what happened in the last years, mainly in our country, is that the prices of energy have increased more than the prices of the products. Of course, we know that there is the difference between competitiveness in cost and competitiveness as advantage of competitiveness, in which other issues as size, innovation and others are important, but really these costs are also important. And this is also relevant because prices of energy, talking here about electricity and gas mainly, because in terms of energy for the industry in Spain, 20% of the cost of the expenses are really other products that are not electricity and gas, are really key. If we look to another important issue, is the relevance that has electricity, not only in the economy, not only for the domestic consumer, but also for the industry. We have analyzed which is the weight of gas and electricity in different industries, and we notice that there is a progressive electrification also in the industry. Of course, there are sectors like paper or glass that really has a big weight of gas in their consumption, 40%, 50%, but really electricity is key. But in general, we can say that electricity and gas are important. And for the whole period, really, the expenses in terms of operating costs, expenses in terms of the gross added value have really increased over the period, although with some changes in the last years related to the gas. What has happened in general in Europe in electricity? Really, this is for the Europe as a whole, but I believe that most of this can be, to a certain extent, also included in the Spanish case. Really, you have here the three components: the network, distribution and transmission, and the taxes and levies. And I take the note that levies really here, in my view, refer to other costs that are not strictly assigned to the transmission and distribution, and this has increased. So one clear conclusion, not only for Spain but also for Europe, is that taxes and levies are increasing and are continuously increasing during the last years. Really, this poses a problem, and pose a problem for the competitiveness of the industry, and indirectly for the competitiveness and for the welfare of the domestic consumer. How countries that are going into a big energy transition that I am not sure that is really right, like in Germany, have solved the matter of competitiveness of their industry? Well, by the way of exemptions to the energy-intensive industries, steel, cement, glass, electronic components, etc., in terms that putting not all the weight of the increasing electricity price and exempting these industries for the prices, for the high prices, so paying only a part. I believe that in the matter of the prices of energy, this, in my view, talking about energy union, this is a relevant issue. In the gas is to a certain extent similar, but has considerable differences, because energy, as you can see in the graph, really is more volatile, because mainly in part energy gas continues being linked to a great extent, particularly in Southwest Europe, Spain and Iberia and Italy, to the oil prices. The network, and you can see that taxes and levies are relatively more reduced. The problem of competitiveness in gas, I think, is different to the competitiveness in electricity. And here it is a key issue that also affects the internal energy market and the energy union. It is the matter of developing more in depth the wholesale markets or the organized markets for gas. We have in Europe a splendid wholesale markets that has a high volume, TTF, national balancing point, but in the northwest and the Mediterranean, this is very low. And in fact, of course, it's a good news that we here in Iberia have developed rather recently an organized gas market, but if you put the numbers of what are really, the volumes are really rather reduced. So let me now take to the matter of interconnections. Really, my first observation should be that in energy infrastructures, Spain has really strong developments mainly in gas in the first decade of the 21st century. And really, we have been developing very reliable infrastructures, domestic infrastructures, in oil products, in gas and electricity. But the drop in demand and versus previous forecasts related to the economic crisis have put a halt to certain growth in infrastructures and perhaps to a low use of some infrastructures. In this respect, I think that the matter of interconnections, it is not only good per se for Europe, but it is also good because the availability that we have in good and reliable infrastructures here in energy, I think is an asset that the Energy Union should utilize. Secondly, I think that we should differentiate when we talk about infrastructures depending on gas and electricity and the country, because we focus, my last remarks will be related to the connection to France, but we shouldn't forget to Portugal and to North Africa, that for gas is very, very important. We have a capacity of 14 and 8 BCM per year coming from the North Africa, so the geopolitics with North Africa for gas is for us very important. And in gas, I believe that looking to the Europe, there has been considerable improvements with the Southern Regional Initiative and with the open seasons with France that gives a way to the commercial possibility that provide an incentive for developing infrastructures. That, I believe that this is an important point, talking about interconnections. Second, we shouldn't forget, as I said, the connections with North Africa, and thirdly, with France. Really, the increase in capacity with Irún for 2 BCM per year, I think, has been a very good news, but we have pending all the interconnections, particularly in the Pyrenees, to be more connected to Central Europe with the gas. And I believe that having the capacity, the infrastructures that we have in our country is really not only a matter of energy union, it's a real pity not utilizing these assets for the Europe.
Eloy, nos vamos de tiempo.
Electricity. And France. Really, Of course, we have to be more interconnected. But the question is to identify why not we are more interconnected and why we have problems in arriving to the 10% in 2020, probably should be in the mid of the 20s, and probably the 50% today is something not reliable or not feasible. I believe that the cost-benefit analysis are okay, but I believe that we have great challenge, economic, technical, we talk in the submarine connection with France, and finance. And we shouldn't forget the economic efficiency in all this matter of interconnections with France. Thank you, and sorry for the delay.
Bueno, tenemos apenas 10 minutos para preguntas.
We have only 10 minutes for questions. I'd like to make a comment. Please go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you very much. I really would like to thank Professor and Mr. Alvarez for the presentation, because they very much link together two of the dimensions of the Energy Union: energy security, and of course one of the primary goals of what we'd like to achieve through the Energy Union, and this is more competitive, lower energy prices. So it means that we need to complete the internal energy market, and we have to work together on making sure that we really would achieve the free flow of energies among our member states. And I think after the presentations of Mr. Alvarez, but also of the Minister earlier this morning, we see what kind of challenge this is and how important it is to find the solution, how to resolve it. But if you allow just a couple of comments on the presentation of Professor Marzo, I think that when the leaders, the head of states and government been deciding about what should be the priorities for the next European Commission, it was quite clear that energy was kind of recurringly coming back to the table under different topics. Energy security, big gas crisis we have in 2009, complaints from industry that our prices are too high, the energy poverty which was aggravated by the economic crisis, doubts if our climate policies are really aligned with our competitiveness goals, link between the energy sector and overall industrial policies in the EU, and also the fact that we are probably not using enough this innovation potential and this great research we do in Europe, because we are very good at basic research, we are very good in developing the new technologies, but then we are somehow selling them usually in Silicon Valley or in States or somewhere else. And therefore, the idea was, what can we do with all these, and how can we make it together? So this is what was behind the idea of the Energy Union. But to be absolutely, I would say, fair, I have to say that what was such a last push where the leaders decided, yeah, we have to go in that direction, it was really the new geopolitics of energy, crisis in eastern Ukraine, all the development in the Middle East, which clearly made it for our leaders very vivid, very plastic, that we, as very dependent continent on energy imports, we have to be much more assertive in energy diplomacy. We have to be much more united in the strategic decisions we are going to take if it comes to the energy security, and create much more scope for becoming really a global actor if it comes to energy discussion. And I think that now we are in a process where we are working together with all member states to simply drive one very simple message. We are the biggest energy market. We are the biggest importer. We pay more than 1 billion euros per day for the energy import. We pay on time. We pay in hard currency. And we are a very predictable customer. So we deserve much better treatment than what we get before. We deserve much better prices. And we want to have a choice who is supplying us the energy. We want to have a choice how much we are going to pay for the quality of the services, and we are open to the global business. And of course, this message had several consequences. The first one was that Russia and the energy exporters from Russia realized how precious our market is. And you see that there is enormous effort in I would say, preserving or increasing the market share in European countries. And therefore you see, I would say, that stream of announcement about Nord Streams, Turkish streams, and different stream, and really strong political will and commercial policy behind making sure that Europe would remain the important market for Russia. Our message to our Russian partners is that, of course, we would welcome your energy, but you have to assure us that it would be for the best price, that the quality of services would be good, and that there will be no strings attached. This was, I think, in 3 sentences, the gist of the decision which was presented this Monday by the Commission, where we are now looking for the final stage, or how to resolve the abuse of the dominant position on the market of the Gazprom. But it's quite clear that to be in that more comfortable position, we need to diversify. And therefore, I put a lot of emphasis and political visibility and present it always as a strategic project. This is Southern Gas Corridor, because I think that if you look at the fate of Nabucco, I think that this project imploded because of, I think, lack of political attention, lack of, I would say, interaction with the business leaders, and I don't think that we can afford another failure in this matter. This project is advancing very well. $45 billion been invested, and despite of all the challenges the professor so well described, I'm convinced that we will have the Caspian gas in Europe before 2020. Of course, these are not huge volumes at the beginning, but it's very important to have this pipeline in such a hydrocarbon-rich region because of Azerbaijan, because of Turkmenistan, because of Iran, because of northern Iraq. So just to be there in that region and to see that we have a pipeline and ability to have the possibility to ship the gas to Europe, I think is very important. And second, I would say very important element which I believe would be beneficial for Europe, this is this LNG revolution. Starting with something which is closer to us with the East Med. I think that that's a huge opportunity for all Mediterranean countries, including Spain, with your capacities of the LNG, because according to the data we have in our possessions, this could become second Norway if it comes to the reserves of gas. And the companies are very active there, so now we are looking for the ways to make it most efficient transport, or what should be the most efficient mode of transport. I think at the beginning, most probably the LNG terminals in the northern Egypt would be used. We did the feasibility study about the pipeline between Cyprus and Crete, which is technically feasible, but the costs are quite high, and of course there need to be a lot of assessment concerning the business case for this pipeline, but this is something what is happening. But it's very important source for the region, for Europe, and we need to make sure that we can place this gas, if needed, on the market, and we would not allow any artificial barriers or any commercial policies which would prevent the suppliers from this part of the world to come to Europe. Professor was describing the possibility of Northern Africa and the US. What I think it's quite important, and that's my impression, which I brought back from United States, they expect that they could become #1 LNG exporter by the end of the decade. I think there will be a fierce competition, especially with Australia, with Qatar, but we see that the LNG really is kind of transforming the gas in a global commodity, which is new, which I think should help us in making sure that we have wider choices, that we can really be part of the global market, and I think that it would help that the prices for the gas would be gradually transformed, and this long-term pipeline contract pricing would be gradually replaced by the gas hub pricing in Europe, and eventually I think we could end up in some kind of global gas pricing mechanism, which we see in oil business, and then of course it will bring much more transparency and much more competition to the gas suppliers. So what is very important for Europe is to make sure that with all these projects which are being proposed, that we would make sure that Europe opens to the diversification, that the EU laws have to be applied, that nobody can abuse its position on the market, and really the best prices, highest quality of the services, and fairest relations would decide who would be the suppliers for the European customer. Second, I think very important thing on energy security is that more energy efficient our economies are, less dependent we would begin, because there is one, I think, very good equation which says that 1% gain in European energy efficiency would reduce the need for gas exports by 2.6%. So we can imagine what we can achieve if we increase energy efficiency by 5%, by 10%, and we know that it's achievable because our building stock simply is outdated, and we really want to improve it. And then, of course, the renewables. This is indigenous source. The wind and sun is ours, and I think more we have them in the mix, the less of the fossil fuels we would need to import. So I think it's a very comprehensive approach, and what we really need is a good European discussion, strategic decision making, where the European countries would really pull in one direction, because that is what is very important. And if you allow me the very short comment on prices, and maybe one comment on the Paris Agreement. I will probably start with Paris Agreement. I was in the White House. I think I was first foreigner, I presume, whom the Secretary of Energy met since he entered into the office, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry. We had very good discussion. He's former governor of Texas. He was governor there for 15 years. And he's very proud, not only that Texas is the biggest state, and that they have a lot of oil, and they have a lot of gas, but they are #1 wind energy producer in the United States. So he knows that all energies are important. And I think that many in the United States clearly understand that it would be much better for such an important player like the United States to be at the Paris table, to be in this decision-making process. But clearly, the discussion is very intense, is very ongoing. And what I was telling them is that Paris Agreement is very symbolic from the point of view that for the first time, global community got really globalized. And I think that it also reflects the fact that low-carbon transition is very closely linked with what the minister was referring to, which is next industrial revolution, that it's a part of it, that we see this energy transition as part of our accommodation to this new industrial and technological challenge, that the renewables and low-carbon energies, energy efficiency, electric cars go very well with the digitization of our economy, that it's kind of interlinked, and if you simply would not develop this segment, you will technologically lag behind. And we see how interested China is in all these technologies. They are very much driven not only by the climate change, by what becomes extremely important, not only in China, but in our European cities, air pollution. And simply one way how to fight air pollution is just simply to use cleaner technology, and China is going to be big on all these things, and we Europeans, we definitely want to remain leaders in this technological development, in innovation, and in deploying these new qualities and new quality innovative approaches in Europe. And on energy prices, Mr. Alvarez, I think, was very precise in describing our problem in Europe. At first, that when we started with this energy transition, at that time, there was strong insistence that it should be national-driven policies. So we ended up with different support schemes, with different subsidies, with different energy mixes across the EU, and which became, in some cases, quite expensive. And that was one of the reasons why now we are looking for the ways how we can benefit from the economies of scales and for really interconnected internal energy market, because we have the problem in all our European member states that the wholesale prices are relatively low, so the energy professionals will tell you that nobody wants to invest because the wholesale prices is so low. But you will have, I believe, universal consensus across the Europe. The end user prices are very high, be it for households or be it for the industry. And if you look why it is so, I think that segment which Mr. Alvarez was describing so well, that segment which consists of taxes, levies, social policy, subsidies, is becoming bigger and bigger, and we have countries in Europe where it's even 60% of the price is somehow covered by this segment. So what we are trying to do is at first to have much more transparency in how the prices are formed and set, what is the composition of the cost structure. So we are now issuing on a biannual basis the report of Eurostat just to make very clear for what the people are paying. We're trying to open this discussion in every member state. What can we do to clean up the cost structure? How can we cover, let's say, social programs by the different items in the budget, that not everything is reflected in the price? And how can we reduce some of the components of the energy prices by making sure that we can look for regional or European-wide solutions? The major challenge there is, and I understand it, that if it comes to the energy policies, it's a very strategic thing, and there is very strong national reflex in energy policy making. And we need to make very strong case, and I hope that in the discussion like this, and thanks to your expertise, that you will help us to build a case to convince our national leaders that if we do it together on regional basis or European-wide basis where possible, we actually save a lot of money, we come up with better solutions, much more synergies, and we can really use that cooperation for cleaning up the cost structure and lowering the energy prices. And I think if we can achieve that, I mean, there will be a lot of positive responses from our citizens, from our industries, and it would be the proof that Europe is doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Bueno, pasamos directamente, yo creo que a la segunda.
We're going to move on to the second panel. We have no time for questions.
How are you doing? Fine, you? Yeah. No, it's very well organized, and just hello now. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Va.
continue with the second panel on energy efficiency through innovation, contracting, and distribution. We have Diego Pavia from KIC Energy. And Twitter and Periscope. So please be very strict with time because our Vice President has to leave soon. Our Commissioner, sorry, has to leave soon.
My presentation, and as always, I'm going to be a bit provocative with you and try to engage the audience also in the pitch. So the winter package, as we all know, and if nobody has read the 1,000 pages, please read them because each page is an opportunity for supporting and enabling the energy transition. Again, each page is an opportunity. And for the first time, innovation, research, and competitiveness is hooked on the policy papers with the 4 directives: energy efficiency, security of supply, the new market design, and so on. And that's extremely important that the Commission and the Parliament are recognizing the importance of this as an enabler to making policy happening. Good news also is that our company is formally mentioned as one of the vehicles for making it happen. And today's in our panel is about energy efficiency. And I focus on the building and Mr. and Mrs. Smith that are living within the building. Albuquerque is going to touch the building. I'm going to touch about Mr. and Mrs. Smith that are both Europeans, okay? And the first thing is we're going to ask to Mr. and Mrs. Smith now in the audience, who in the audience, please raise your hands. Do you believe you are living in a smart home? Smart home. Okay, who of you, because you're executives, who of you believe you are working in a smart building? A couple of hands. A couple of hands.
So there is
So the point that I want to make is that technology exists, innovation exists, regulation has been reinforced in the last winter package. Everything exists. So why there is such a slow uptake of this? Because at the end, we have created what we call in our jargon the citizen maturity level. So how mature we are as far as energy is concerned. And we put 4 levels: awareness, understanding, involvement, and steering. And we have been bombarded, all of us, from the business domain with all those nice buzzwords. You're going to be a prosumer. You're going to be, the price signal is going to change your behavior. But we don't react. Now there's a new buzzword in the winter package that is a smartest indicator. We're going to have a smart indicator on the building stock and so on. But we're not reacting. So there are no transactions. Why? Because the citizen is down there. He's just looking and saying, oh, are you talking to me? Like Taxi Driver in the film. So we need to bring the citizen upwards, to bring their awareness of what energy is. And for this, Vice President, our call is that that's of the public domain. To work with the next generation, because that's a generational change, and also to bring the awareness of how we as citizens understand energy. Not as consumers, also as citizens, because maybe a citizen is also an investor in energy. And we can take good examples like the Swedes. In Sweden, this is the transactions that are happening up there, and there will be the snowball effect only happening when we are able to bring the citizen up to the level of involvement and steering. And as we know, culture eats a strategy for breakfast. Culture is extremely important. Behavior is extremely important. So we believe that we have to work on behavior. And for the last 2 years, I've been working, because I've got the privilege to be working in many countries in Europe as innovators, in transforming the NIMBYs, the concept as you all know, to PIMBYs. Please, in my backyard. Please, I want to be the early adopter. Please, I want to be one practitioner of what is upcoming. And for this, only the last message from us is, we have to work on behaviors and on emotions. Again, technology exists, regulation exists, business models exist, everything is there for the right dish. What is missing is the transaction with the citizen, again, not the consumer, only the citizen, and for this we have to work on emotions. That was my pitch.
Thank you very much. Please, Almudena, go ahead.
Difficult now. So I'm going to touch some subjects you have already. Okay, thank you. So hello everybody. Hello Vice President. My name is Almudena Fuster. I'm an architect and I'm working for the Housing Agency of Madrid City Council. We have been involved for nearly 15 years in European projects funding energy efficiency in our buildings and districts. And, well, in fact, my vision is a little more close to Earth, let's say, no? Because we are dealing with fuel poverty, we are dealing with buildings that do not perform at all, and we are dealing with things like the possibility to increase the energy efficiency easily in a 60–80%. So a reduction of consumption of this range. So as you can see here, this is a building. This is a very normal and conventional building. I'm quite sure you do not live in a smart home, but you live in one of those, and it performs as a radiator. This is what is happening with your energy and with the bill you are paying, and this is the result of well, we are hitting the street, in fact. So, well, I'm going to talk about public-private collaboration in this, and as I was saying, this is me. This is one of our star projects. It's from a long time now. It was one of the first things we started, and it is a three-level strategy: urban strategy, district strategy through a park, urban through this boulevard, eco boulevard, and very efficient, which has performed very well, building of 140 social dwellings. Now the eco boulevard is not really working because it has been vandalized. It's a quite lone area, but the building is working very well, and the tenants are very pleased. Well, they are owners, in fact, because it used to be a period where the MVS used to produce buildings for selling, not for renting, as they are doing right now. So I'm going to focus on energy retrofitting because in 2012, there was a very good opportunity for us. In the calls the European Community start to launch, this is not yet Horizon 2020, it's FP7, and we managed to get 3 different projects, European projects, on energy retrofitting at the same time, in the same calls. And then we added 3 national ones because derived from the European calls, there were as well calls in the Spanish landscape. So what we did is we concentrate these 3 projects in an area of 8,000 dwellings with a need of retrofitting in 5,000 dwellings from these 8,000. And in this place, the MVS was in charge of the whole urban retrofitting, as well as allocating the funds for the users or for the owners. So at the end, I think the investment has been, in 10 years, 70 millions, 70,000 millions, sorry. And, well, we have been able to retrofit, I think it's just 30%, which is more or less a 3% per year. At the beginning, it was very, very slow, and at the end, it works quite well. So, well, this is the area. It's a very old area with buildings from the 40s to the 70s, which means it's a very big opportunity because the starting point is very low, so you can easily reach, as I was saying, between 60, being conservative, to 80% reduction. So this is just to show you the type of buildings. Amazingly, because we have been dealing as well a very big study on building stock in Europe, these kind of buildings are typical in any country. You will find them in Germany, in Holland, you will find them everywhere. No? And amazingly as well, they perform as bad as ours because they do not have insulation, yes, but with worse conditions, which is quite weird, isn't it? Because I didn't expect people in Germany being so cold inside. No? So one of the benefits, oh, sorry, I'm going back. No, sorry. Yeah, well, this is the type of building to put you in the situation. And well, the opportunity has been to work with private owners, because at the time we get involved in these big projects, these are collaborative projects of 10 million euros per project. We did not have, the MVS did not have buildings to apply the results and to use as demos, because we are like the demo partner. So what we did is we decide, which was quite risky in fact, and has been the beautiful part of the project, to involve private owners, private buildings, in the phase of starting a retrofitting, a conventional retrofitting in the whole building. So what we did is we add our measures to this retrofitting experience, and this is what has worked quite well. Well, what I would like to say is it has been very hard to convince, even if it was for free, all the users. We took a year to get the agreement for with each of the communities, but it has been very good to have the feedback from the end users since the beginning to the research teams. This has been great, because we have managed to develop things that are really working now. In fact, the last bill invoice in January has been in a building of 10 dwellings of 400 euros, which is nothing compared with what was happening just 2 years ago. So the results are really good. It has been hard to convince them. It has been hard to make them understand comfort is important, because they were spending 2,000 euros per year in energy without indoor conditions. There were, and even if there were people not spending anything at all, well, we were monitoring the dwellings. Just last thing. We were monitoring the dwellings, and it was curious to see that there was no energy consumption in the whole week, except on Friday, where they was starting to go up. And this was, we asked this man of one of these buildings, and he told us that his partner was coming on Fridays. So because he was always cold, he needed to put on the heating, and that's why we saw the monitoring curves going like this, and then like this again on Monday. Then these people were really in poverty, fewer poverty conditions. What we have managed, and this is something you were saying before, is because we applied not just very efficient installations and renewables, but a very efficient envelope, we have managed to stabilize the buildings in 18 degrees, which is very good for anybody, because you just need to put a light coat and that's it, you are in good conditions. While they were before in 10 degrees in a winter day with 1 degree outside. So, well, we have been working with people, constantly involving them in meetings. This part has been tough, but very, very enriching. Well, you can see we have needed to demonstrate all the products to make them comfortable with what was going to happen. These are the results. We have integrated PV and solar thermal panels into ETICS, which is the insulation, external insulation. So, well, what I would like to go to the dissemination has been great as well, and this is part of what I would like to say. The awareness raising is basic. We need more of this, and we need money put it into people knowing what means comfort, what means energy savings, and what means energy expenditure. And this was easy because there was young people, so it was very easy to make a competition with them and among them, and to reach very good results. And for conclusions and some way forward, end user awareness attitudes and consumption behavior is important, is basic. In fact, all the performance foreseen in the evaluation programs and systems is not correct because of the end user behavior. They use the building differently than we expect them to use it. So training the owners is as well quite important. For the investors, we need business models because we need to involve the banks in that. It's true that we need to aggregate different buildings, and the scale must be like district scale to make it profitable. And from the technical point of view, we need to include the post-demo, the post-research and demonstration. I mean, we need maintenance included in all, we need continuous commissioning, and we need to train people which are not trained like common building contractors and consultants and so on. So thank you very much.
Pues tenemos tiempo para...
We've got time for merely 2 questions, one from the floor and one from Twitter. Otherwise, we ask the question from the Twitter and we gain time. Go directly to the Twitter question and we are gaining some time. They are asking, why do you to penalize the collective autoconsumption or the individual one? Why penalize it? Be concise in your answers, please. Why penalize the collective or individual autoconsumption?
Lady, I think it's a lady, is that the new winter package waives this penalization, equalizes all the Europeans so they can feed back into the grid, and it's absolutely an enabler towards this problem. So it's solved.
Microphone, please.
Vamos rápidos. We go so quick today. Bueno, pues continuamos con la tercera.
Let's continue with the third panel discussion, energy, climate change, and social challenges from transportation to housing. We have Pedro Linares from the Comillas Pontifical University, who will tell us about the energy transition in Spain. And I would urge you to please be brief, because we're running out of time.
Okay, so I would like just to make 3 points in my presentation. If we want to engage in this energy and climate transition, the first thing, there are some things that we need to decide. The first one is where we want to go. At the European level, I think we have very clear indications. At the Spanish level, I'm not so sure. Maybe I was listening to the minister's presentation and I didn't hear much about the energy plan. And if we don't have a plan, as you know, as Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said, we're just talking about wishes. We need a plan, we need a vision, because if not, as the Bible says, and this is a quote that my colleague Ignacio Pérez Arriaga always likes to say, we will die. And I don't want to die. I want to do better in our energy and climate sector. So very welcome. I welcome very much to have this vision of where we want to go in Spain in 2030 and 2050. The second is, okay, but in order to start a journey, we need to understand where we are now. And this is a bit of self-promotion. On the 30th of March, we are presenting our annual observatory on energy and climate. And we will be showing this type of figures which represent where we are in Spain now in the energy sector. And what this shows is basically that our major concern should be transport and buildings, of course. Not industry, not commercial. It's mostly transport and residential. And this is where we should address all our efforts if we actually want to change what we are doing. Especially regarding climate objectives. This is the same Sankey diagram, but only for CO2 emissions. You can see there where our CO2 emissions are coming. They are not a lot of them are coming from the power sector. Most of them are coming from the energy, from the transport and refining sector. So this is again where our emphasis should be. And what to do along the way, and this is my third point. I think there are some basic elements that we should take into account in our discussion about how to deal with the transition in Spain. The first thing is to debate about ends, not about means. I'm a bit tired about discussing about technologies. This is not about technologies. This is about costs. This is about emissions. This is about energy security. And to have independent analysis that help us decide which are the trade-offs that we need to face between these ends. Second, I'm glad that we had Diego Pavia here with us. We need to think which is our role in the innovation system. This is a global system, and we need to determine where we want to collaborate, where we want to lead. So it's very well if we think that Spain or Europe at large can become a leader in the technology innovation sector, but that is not true in a global innovation system. We need to decide where we want to lie and what is we want to bet on in order to have our own role in this. And finally, I think it's also very important to manage the transition. I think Mariano also mentioned this. There will be losers. We cannot think that everybody is going to win from this. And we need to deal carefully with these losers in order so that they don't block this process that we have to get in. Final measure, and I think this is so important, in all these debates about energy.
Muchas gracias. Perfecto. Teresa, seguimos.
That was perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for your invitation. I'd like to say that there are few women in the table, and secondly, I'm going to speak Spanish. And I'm going to dedicate a few minutes, and I will try to finish on time. 5 simple messages. 1, regarding where we want to go. We have a reference. We have needs. We have the need to decarbonize our economic model. Electricity, transportation, housing, and yes, attention to transport, mobility, etc. is absolutely determining. This represents, when it comes to all CO2 emissions in the European Union, mobility and transportation accounts for 2/3, 25% in the case of transport, 31% in the case of Spain. 25% is European Union, 31% domestic transport. 41% are emissions related to housing, buildings, energy consumption in buildings, and for Europe is, well, so it's a very significant part if we really want to achieve this unavoidable goal. Is not something that is negotiable, that we can escape. The second take-home message is that these are the 2 areas where there's been slower progress and where things are more complex. We cannot make individual decisions nor sectoral decisions. We need broader decisions, which are more complex, more complicated, more sophisticated, and we need more alignment of different players. We can say that there have been some interesting changes, not as many as we should have had. We're not up to the expectations of the winter package, although for the first time we're approaching systemic changes that go beyond the natural trends of marginal improvements. below the potential we could achieve if we think in theoretical terms. And the third message is a message about which are the emissions that have the greatest social impact. If we want to win the battle of energy transition and a decarbonized economy, we talked about playing with values and emotions before. These are the emissions that are more directly related to people's well-being and welfare, the ones that have the most relevant impact and that reduce inequalities the most. If we don't approach this or manage this inappropriately, then there will be greater inequalities. So we have to think about how we're going to do it and make credible proposals. Otherwise, people will see it as something that doesn't affect them, that affect the industry, big energy companies and financial companies, and they won't see it as something that affects citizens alone. Number 4, we need a better level of coordination between sectoral regulators, between different decision-making levels, but also between different types of players. It's good that the European Union has paid attention to this aspect, underscoring the social aspects, talking about how important energy poverty is. It's also interesting to see that in the Commission package, for the first time, they're trying to unlock the potential of local communities in this field, because let's not forget that even though until now the signals have come from regulatory standards, insufficient and not always appropriate, both in terms of definition and implementation, especially in mobility and transportation, which have been implemented in a very curious way, at a European and a national level, there has been little progress. They haven't taken advantage of the great capillary power that local governments have, since they're very close to the urban space and they could work on this in a more efficient manner. Number 5, if we concentrate on this debate and we see what has worked and what hasn't worked, well, I think that the crisis of emissions in the car industry has been very damaging for confidence levels. And again, I go back to what citizens feel when we make proposals to them. We know that it's not so much a problem of having better technology, which we already have, but the success of the combustion engine. And here we have great challenges. Not only machines are enough. So mobility is not the only technology solution. There are many more things. And the second thing is that Almudena showed to what extent we can do things in the building sector, but she underlined the opportunities. The example, the boutique example. Instead of a generalized intervention, the Vice President spoke about how good we are in basic research and how poor we are generalizing those answers that we find. So if we want to take seriously, if we really believe that the priority is efficiency, and I heard the minister talk about it, if I ask people on the street how easy it is for you to retrofit buildings in Spain, well, they're going to laugh at me because it's not easy. Interestingly, we have the opposite experience. When we've tried to turn the building sector, the driving force of our economy, we gave a lot of money to the sector. And now we have to do the same. It's not the same with the European Investment Bank subsidies. No, we have to look at the details and carry out a massive deployment at a human scale of all these changes, things that we at the higher level have very little ability to control.
Surprisingly, we've got 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes for the questions. And it's surprising after this military discipline we have achieved that. If somebody in the audience would like to ask a question, it's the right time to do that now. Using the microphone, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure having you here. Just one question as we talk about climate change. I'm Sara Pistinato from Greenpeace. We haven't touched upon the issue of payment per capacity. This is included. This is a very important element for us in the energy package, and we need to know that we could not use from 2021 in order to finance thermal coal plants in any way. We don't understand why the money of the citizens, and we want them to make auto consumption, to invest, etc. But we also understand that the taxes and what we pay as consumers shouldn't go to certain technologies. It's just a question to know if really you consider that it will be impossible to finance with public funds or with capacity mechanisms certain types of thermal plants, especially those of coal. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, please answer.
I will answer this question, and then maybe before we break for the coffee, as I saw in the program, I see that Ruben is very, very efficient moderator, so I didn't have a chance to even react to the previous panel, and I just would like to say a few words, but I believe that Ruben will give me that opportunity before we break up for the coffee. Concerning this question, I believe it's related to the capacity mechanisms. And I mean, for the experts in the room, they know, but for those who are not experts on energy, the capacity mechanisms are used in some of our member states for financial support of the capacity you might need in the case of the peak consumptions. Very often it's used only for few hours or few days per year, but of course the ministers, the energy sector, they want to be sure that the lights are on all the time and there is enough energy in the system. And of course we wanted to understand that problem better, so we did something which is called sector-wide inquiry, how the public money is used and how the capacity mechanisms are working across the Europe. And so I think we made the sector inquiry for 11 member states. I think we found 24 capacity mechanisms, and we've been convinced that the public money could be spent in much more efficient way if we introduce certain conditions. And if you would look in our proposal in the winter package, what we are proposing at first, that before the decision is taken on the capacity mechanism, that you have to do something which is called EU-wide generation adequacy, meaning that if you have a problem in your concrete region or in your concrete country, that what would need to be assessed if in the case of super high peak demand, you cannot get energy from your neighbor across the border or from the region. So you would really use the regional approach and economies of scale before going for the subsidy. Second, I think very important rule which we are proposing is that these capacity mechanisms should not distort the performance of the market, should not slow down the necessary reform, and they have to be temporary. So there will be certain time until you really have to fix the problem through the appropriate means. And then the last condition you mentioned is, I think, quite tough, because it says that you cannot use the capacity mechanisms for the power plants which would have emission more than 550 grams for kilowatt hour. Yeah, for the new power plants. So what I want to say is that this would have to be the new generation of the power plants, combined heat and power. So it would be very, very rare, and I already see that this is one of the extremely sensitive point which we are discussing with our member state, because they see this condition as very demanding, as pushing the the energy industry in very, very clear manner to the options for the much cleaner means of energy production than before. So what I want to say is that in certain cases you might need the capacity mechanism, but before you do, we want to see what can be done on the European scale, what can be done on the regional scale, what could you get through the cross-border cooperation, how you want to ensure that the reforms are done, that the market is not distorted, and then you have this very strong limitation for the clean use of energy production. So what I want to say is that what we proposed, we really believe it's the most profound transformation of the energy systems which would be achieved if this new law is proposed, since the centralized fossil-based energy networks been built in Europe, and therefore there will be also a lot of focus and attention paid to how eventually the capacity mechanisms will be used.
Gracias. Hay otra pregunta por aquí al fondo.
Thank you very much. There is another question at the back. There is another question at the back of the room. Hello, good morning. My name is José Luis Muñoz. I'm director of Climate Kick in Spain. My question is addressed in the current situation that we have in Europe, an aspect that can bring us together and make us stronger are the actions in order to face the climate change and the opportunities that this means for Europe especially. My question is addressed to the Vice President of the European Commission. What role is Europe going to play in the current situation where we have the agreements of the COP21 and the United States that is quite reluctant to keep on being in that global agreement? And what are the opportunities that this can mean for Europe, and how is the Union going to take advantage from it?
Thank you very much for the question. I think that it was quite obvious already at COP22 in Marrakesh that there have been, I would say from one side, already doubts how the US would adopt the policy vis-à-vis the Paris Agreement. Nothing is decided yet, but of course the concerns is on the table. And there you could already see how the world, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, was turning to us. That now it's up to you Europeans, you have to carry on, you have to show your leadership, you have to show your resolve, and you have to help the world, indeed, in this very difficult juncture, to go into the positive direction which we just decided several months ago. And I have to say that I was in Paris when the agreement was being negotiated, and I participated in segment with business leaders, with the mayors, with innovators, and that positive energy which was kind of flowing from this meeting was unprecedented. And this time it was not, I would say, kind of European only, but it was really global mobilization of the world community to do the right thing. On top of it, because the emotions, I totally agree, are very important, I think that we in Europe also demonstrated that this energy transition has a very strong business case behind it. That how many jobs is created, what kind of investment attraction potential these technologies present, and how big demand there is for green tech, clean tech, and all this integration system capabilities we developed in Europe. If you look at the world, there is 1.3 billion people who do not have basic access to electricity. And it's quite clear that in India or somewhere in Africa, they simply cannot repeat our fossil way of development because of the air pollution, because of the climate change, and because simply in Congo it's impossible to build the hundreds and thousands of kilometers of overhead cabling across the African jungle. So they clearly are looking for our new technologies, microgrids, decentralized production, PV panels, wind turbines, and ability to integrate it all together. So I believe that we in Europe are the first economy which clearly demonstrated that we could grow by 50% since 1990, and at the same time to cut our greenhouse gas emission by 22%. Nobody else has done it. We achieved that, and we know that we've been pioneering and we made a lot of mistakes on the way. So if we do it right, we know how much more efficient and how much more convincing this case would be. So I believe that we would continue in our path, that we have to embrace this role of the global leaders in this change, that we should use the fact that we've been the first movers for, I would say, consolidating of our technological leadership in this effect, and be much more assertive in promoting our companies, European companies, with this know-how, and help them to conquer the world in a way, in a positive sense, to export these technologies, that we should channel our development aid. This is another area where I know that the United States is considering to cut the official development assistance, and we are not going to do so. But I think we should focus it even more on what is very important for the sustainability, for the alleviation of the poverty in Africa and other developing countries, but helping them to produce the clean energy, but helping them to build energy efficient buildings, and just simply to show what the European technology could do. So I think that the progress is unstoppable, and I hope that all the people who are now intensely debating this in the Washington, that they would realize that it's better to be at the diplomatic table when these things are discussed, and that in the end they are a very entrepreneurial nation. They will realize that it's not some kind of philanthropy what we are doing here, but it's very important for the economic future, and all these policy developments have very, very business sense. The good thing is that we know now the chance to show the leadership again and really to materialize it also in economic terms.
Thank you. I think you want to do some comments about the second panel. You can do it now, then we finish because we are...
No, thank you very much. You are very kind, Ruben. I just wanted really to say a couple of positive words about Diego and the work they do in Energi, and also to thank him for really reading every page of the winter package proposal, because I heard that it's longer than Bible and Gone with the Wind together, so it requires a lot of resilience. But in the end, it's 8 legislative proposals together, so it's very, very deep transformation which we are promoting, and I'm sure that he was glad that he found that how much we are relying on innovations, on new energies, and I want to tell you that his kick is really the best performing from all of them we have, and it's because of his positive energy, attitude, that all that quality that he can bring very smart people, very talented people together and show them where the business case could be and how we can attract the funding for these changes. And I also would like to thank Madam Fuster for reminding us something very, very important, that with today's technology we can reduce the energy consumption in our buildings by 60 to 80%. 60 to 80% with the current available technologies, which is remarkable. And I totally agree with Madame Ribera that nevertheless it's very difficult to do it, because sometimes we have, I would say, legal problems. Sometimes you have to convince all the tenants or the household holders in one apartment building. I visited such an apartment block in Paris, where we are realizing one of the biggest programs yet. We are providing through the investment platform in France 400 million for refurbishment of 40,000 households. So I went to one of these apartment blocks, and there was a gentleman who managed to negotiate with all household owners. There were 72 families, and he told me, it was not easy. I was ready to appoint him immediately to become Secretary General of United Nations, because to achieve that in a very short period of time was something remarkable. But for me, what was extremely satisfying was when I talked to the people living in his apartment. They've been saving something like 1,000 euros per year. It was a social housing, so they really appreciated it a lot. They had the feeling they're living in a new apartment, much cleaner air, much healthier conditions, and they've been very happy about what the local authority, what the regional authority, and what the European Union did for them. And I think these are the projects which I think we should really promote, and therefore also this afternoon we'll be talking with the ministers about the investment platform, because I think, as you said, that Spain was very good in absorbing the money. I think the plan is to spend from the structure fund something like 2 billion euros. But we would like to work with the Spanish government to use at least part of this money through that smart financing for smart building platform we are creating, to use EIB risk sharing, to use EIB leveraging capacity, and to multiply this money by bringing in the private investors in a way that many more projects could be financed by them. I can tell you that so far through the Juncker Investment Fund we have ratio which is quite conservative, 1 to 10. So why not to try this innovative financing and to bring more money into this refurbishing, innovation and renovation sector, because it clearly can help enormously. And if you allow me just last 2 comments, one on the planning and strategizing. That would be my second issue, which I will have for the discussion, and we touched upon briefly on it with the minister this morning. Part of our winter package is also governance proposal. And I would say we want to convince the member states to have the discussions like we have here today on a regular basis, and to have a bit of a public debate with the citizens, with the stakeholders, when the national governments see their country's climate plans, how they want to fit into the Paris targets, how they want to respect the commitments we all signed up for, and this was that we would have carbon neutral economies by 2050. And I know that it's not very usual for the governments, because they very much think in the election cycle. So we have, I think, in the EU only 7 countries with the long-term plans for energy and climate. So we would like to work with the national governments to work on these plans. It doesn't have to be rocket science. We want to have something which is an extension of the Energy Union, and which would be comparable to the targets and to the plan which we set for ourselves. Why is it important? Because I'm absolutely convinced this will bring a lot of investment in this sector. Because when I'm talking to the financial markets, they are telling me, look, we are very glad that you have now the global framework, that you have Paris Agreement. We very much like what you propose as the new European legislation. We see that enthusiasm which is there among the mayors. But what we need this very important 4th level of government to fall into the picture. The clear indications how the national governments would apply all this, that they would be drivers of the change. And when we see that you have these 4 levels of government in alignment, we'll come and we'll invest. And I think therefore, it's very important to talk to the citizens, stakeholders, what is the energy transition, how we want to transform our countries, and what kind of message we are sending to financial markets to bring the private investment, which would be very much needed for this energy transition. And the last thing, it's social aspect, that nobody should be left behind, that we should simply think about those cities, those regions, those people who might lose their professions in the future, and just simply not only be aware of that, but work with these regions, with these people, that we know that there is a problem, we know that there is a challenge, but we are ready to help you. We are ready to work on the new business case for the region, we are ready to work on reskilling, we are ready to work on social assistance if needed, because otherwise it's very natural, they would resist, they will try to block the change, they will be afraid what the future will bring, and therefore we need to work in very strong social terms to make sure that nobody is really left behind. So I really would like to thank the both panels for bringing all these ideas to the table, because it just confirms that we are thinking along the same line, and that we are very much aware of the challenges, but we already heard this morning a lot of good solutions. Thank you very much, Ruben.
I just would like to thank Mr. Šefčovič for having come to Spain. we could have a couple of more hours, and I'm convinced that many questions have not been answered, but unfortunately time is scarce. But we thank the Commission for the organization of the technical equipment for the whole task they have been developing, and don't leave before going up to the cocktail without seeing what the fantastic drawing here to the right has been done by our good friend, the